do that. But hi everybody watching. It is so good to see you. In the comment section, message me where you're coming in from, where you're tuning in from. So if you don't notice, I'm in a little bit different of a background than I normally am. Tonight I am in Bullhead City, Arizona. If you have ever been to Bullhead City, Arizona, or have been to Laughlin, which is right across the river, let me know. I want to know if you've seen this amazing twin cities of the Arizona area before. But welcome everybody. It is so great to see you. I see all of you guys popping in. It's so great to see everyone. My name is Mickey Speer. I appreciate you rolling with the punches tonight. Normally I have a very different setup because I'm back at home, but tonight I am at my grandpa's house in Arizona. And so we're kind of doing it on the fly. We're doing it a little mobile edition, but I'm so happy to have you here. I'm a musician, author, and talk show host of The Healing Half. And tonight we are talking about leaning into legacy, which is so important for all of us to understand, but it's extremely critical when you are talking on days that are hard. Days like anniversaries of people who have passed away, on their birthdays, there's so many things that it's important to lean into legacy on. And tonight's show could not be more applicable because today happens to be the 1-year anniversary of when my wonderful grandma passed away. And so I'm going to show you her photo. If you know Weezy or Louise or grandma, let me know. This is her. It just so happened my husband and I were able to plan a trip to visit Grandpa and all of his great friends in the area on this day. And I really wanted to let the show go on, right? Because obviously I want you guys to learn as I'm learning. And as the year mark comes up, I've had a ton of emotions. So we're going to talk about leaning into legacy here in a moment. But before that, I just wanted to give a little intro of who I am. And if you know me, please say hi in the comments and how you know me. That way this helps other people know how you found the show. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to share this video. Just hit that share button, and then that will let your friends know that you're watching the show, and hopefully it brings value to them too. So when I was 13 years old, my mom, who is actually right here, that's my grandma, and then that's my beautiful mom and my amazing aunts and grandpa who's watching. I've never had a live audience before, and I've got people in front of me for the first time ever, so he's right there, which is really fun. But my mom right there passed away from colon cancer when I was 13, and I spent the better part of a decade avoiding feeling, telling everybody who loved me and cared about me and wanted to help that I was fine, because I didn't want to let people in, and I didn't want people to see that side of me. I wanted to pretend that I was strong enough and that I could do it on my own. But eventually, as you all know, you have to go through grief. It's just a matter of whether it's on your terms or not. And 10 years after my mom died is when eventually those walls started to crash down. And I knew I had to get help. I was out of control in all aspects of my life, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. School was getting harder. And I realized I had to start addressing my grief. So I began this journey of starting to go to the counselor, reading books, and leaning into these emotions. And I wanted to start a show, The Healing Half, that you're tuned into right now, that helps all of us learn how to address our own wounds, as well as learn how to help others. So tonight's show is a kind of a duplicity one, where we're going to talk about going into the year mark and some things to keep in mind, but then also how do we lean into legacy, and how is that going to help all of us on our various grief journeys. So going into this weekend, I could feel my old self kind of creeping back in. My brain was very busy. I knew the 1-year mark was coming around the corner, and I could tell that I was not wanting to go there because it was emotional and it was hard, and I wanted just to be upbeat and have fun. But my body always seems to know about a week before my brain catches up that something big is happening. And of course, because this show is all about leaning into our emotions, I knew I had to do some of that hard work. So going in to today, and maybe you guys can relate to this, let me know if you can. I felt like I was very distracted, and that's where God just kind of really worked all this together. Because I already had the notes for the show planned out, I knew what I had to do in order to lean into those emotions and give that busy energy a direction. Because what that is that's your brain saying there's something you need to talk about, but you're not talking about it. And so I felt that for myself personally. And of course, pulling up to grandma's house and not having her here, that was really hard. Everything looks the same except for she's not there. And I know so many of you guys can relate to that exact same sentiment. So as we talk about going into these year anniversaries, I just want to let you know that I'm with you. I'm feeling all the feels right now. And if you have any wisdom on what helps you as you kind of come across what we call angelversaries, send it in the comments section. I would love, love, love to hear what your thoughts are on how to do that. But the big thing that I came away with is when we are hurting and on days that are particularly hard, like 1 year anniversaries, the best thing that we can do is lean into legacy, which is the title of tonight's show. And you might be saying, what does that mean? Well, I drew this really fancy graphic for all of us to be able to share. So I'll kind of bring it a little bit closer for you. Think of every single person that has been really particularly close to you in your life. Mom, dad, kids, your best of best friends, all of them take up a square. And truthfully, you probably don't have too many squares. None of us do, because the people that are absolutely closest to us are so valuable, and they're few and far between, right? And when one of those people that make up our foundation of who we really are and who made us who we are and who we love so deeply, when one of those people goes away, first of all, no one can replace that hole. Can I get an amen, right? No one's ever going to replace that part of your foundation. But also, that is a hole that your brain is cognitively aware of. Your body knows that your part of your heart is missing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Subconsciously, those 10 years after my mom died, I was crying behind the scenes all the time. I was stressed out. I knew something was wrong. I just wouldn't let myself go there. And if you think about this foundational piece, your body craves for you to know that this is still a piece of you. And when we live life in denial and we try to pretend, oh, that never happened, I'm fine, you're only acknowledging half of your foundation or a part of your foundation. And so it's really, really important for your mental health, for my mental health, and the mental health of the whole community, that we acknowledge when parts of us are hurting. Because if we don't, we're being fake to the world, and the world will be able to tell. I mean, every person I told that I was fine after my mom died, they knew I wasn't fine, right? You're a 13-year-old whose mom just died. You're not fine, right? So they might know it, but they can't help you unless you're willing to get help. So step one is acknowledging that part of our foundation is gone, and embracing that hurts, and that's really hard. When a chunk of your foundation goes away, you're not supposed to be able to just, hey, tomorrow's a new day, I'm better, I'm okay. You're supposed to be able to feel that and lean into that, because it hurts, because it mattered. And when you acknowledge that, you're telling the world, you're telling your friends, I'm a different person than I was before, because part of me is gone. And that part is still craving our acknowledgement. Another way to think about this is most of us have a clock in our house, and it's that old clock that has those the ticking, right? Well, if you live in a house long enough, you can ignore that sound. In fact, most of the time, you might not even know that sound is there. But eventually, that ticking is going to come up to your forefront, and you're going to have to remember, oh yeah, I've got this clock in my house. I kind of forgot, because I get so busy with the world. I don't really remember that I have a clock in my kitchen that ticks. But that ticking is this part of us begging to be acknowledged, saying, hey, I'm part of your foundation. Remember me. I made you who you are. Don't forget about me. And when we lean into that ticking, when we press pause for a moment on those days that are hard, as tough as it is, to acknowledge those tough emotions, that's where the real healing and the real magic comes from. And that's why leaning into legacy is what the second step is after acknowledging that we're having hard emotions. So what are your thoughts? Do you like that ticking clock analogy? Does the foundation ring a bell? If you've lost anybody that's close to you, ask yourself the question, have you forgotten them? Do you never think about that person again? Or are they on your mind often? Let me know which of those metaphors really ring true for you, because they both mean a lot to me. And I hope that one of them cuts through. So whether you're thinking of it, okay, I need to acknowledge the foundational part, or I need to acknowledge that ticking clock, the next question then that we follow it up with is how? How do I begin to feel that pain? How do I begin to process and move forward in a positive way? And I came up with this again, and I really do apologize. Is this backwards for you guys? I made these signs getting all ready for today, and I just realized they're probably coming up backwards for you. So let me know if you can read this. The big thing, don't overthink about this. This is what I came up with today, and this will be sent out in my summary email. So if you haven't yet, jump onto my website. It's mickyspeer.com, and you can sign up for my weekly resource email. I will send it out this weekend when I get back from my grandpa's house and my little Arizona trip. But this is a little pyramid that I came up with on days that are hard, how do we lean into legacy in a way that's really meaningful? I'm going to go through these 3 steps, and we're going to wrap it up for today. The first one is this is kind of the basics. It's start here. Start with the 5 senses, and I'll go through what that means. And these are relatively easy. They're easy to do without having to get everybody else on board, because when you live in a household where everybody's got a different grieving style, it can be hard because different people are going to want to do different things. So the beautiful thing about this chart is you don't have to necessarily wait on someone else's preferences in order to move forward. You're able to say, you know what? I don't care what their preferences are today. I can do what they need me to do with them. But for me, I can do this chart on my own time without interfering with anybody else or causing any waves, and still be super impactful. So step 1, we'll do the 5 senses activities. Then the little more intense, but again, this takes more effort, this takes more action, would be taking time to name your emotions. We're going to get more into that in a second. That's the processing part. But the kicker, the last step, is going forward. And that's really where legacy is put into words, and you come up with an action plan on how can I take this terrible loss that I'm grieving and actually do something about it, and use that energy and channel it in the right direction. All of these are going to help. And if you can, we're going to work our way this way, but don't feel bad if you can't get there today. Every step along the way is something in the right direction. So starting off with the 5 senses, before I dive into that triangle and go into each layer, I wanted to kind of talk about what is legacy and why is that important. So if you have I would love to hear, if you had to put legacy to a sentence, what would you say legacy is? To me, and again, there's no wrong answers. Everybody's got their own definition. So don't feel bad if yours is different from somebody else's. But to me, legacy is what that person leaves us with, and it can not only connect us with their memory, which is why it's so important that we lean into it, it also allows us to acknowledge the gap that we feel, right? When we acknowledge the pain and we seek to find meaning for this person after they've passed away in our own lives, it allows us to have this nice flow between past and present. And there's no hose that's kinked. We're not ignoring any part of ourselves. We're unkinking the hose, and we're letting ourselves still be impacted by the people that we've lost. And that's so powerful. I mean, what a better way to think of their spirit living on is through us acknowledging their legacy. Another thing that legacy kind of comes to mind with me is it not only lets us learn from their life, and we can finish the business they didn't get to finish, right? We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but it allows us to keep their spirit going because we're carrying on the work that they cared about. But it also allows us to bless others. I mean, think about it. Using my grandma as an amazing example, she passed away a year ago today from a sudden stroke, which is so hard, and I wouldn't even have to get into it too much, but she was, and if you knew her, let me know your thoughts on her because she's amazing. She was so funny, and she was a great cook and a great host, and everybody was her friend, and she was a great wife, a great mom, a great grandma. She was just all these amazing things. And let's just take one tiny aspect. She was a great cook. Phenomenal, always had food on the table, was never a question of whether we were gonna eat in or eat out. It was just there was food on the table because she had planned it for weeks. So let's say I take that and I channel it towards my family. That's a channel, right? That's a pivot. And so it's grandma's teaching me how to carry on that for her. So in an indirect way, she is still blessing people through me. And I think that's really powerful. And the cooking is just one small example. There's tons of other things. There could be attributes of your character that can live on through you and bless other people. And this person is what influenced you to really take on that patience, kindness. I just think it's so powerful that they get to live on through us, and that their characteristics that they taught us, whether it's physical or more emotional, are blessing other people. And that's how their spirit lives on. And that's really, when we boil it down, what I think legacy is. Give me an amen in the comment section if you agree. I love that. I love to be able to know that they live on through us. And that's truly what I think legacy means. So now that we understand legacy is important, and it allows us to connect with our grief, bless other people, and really find meaning in that hole that we're feeling and not feel so disconnected from it. Let's get to this triangle. Again, this stuff on top is a little bit easier to do, and as we work down the way, then we're going to get to kind of future steps. So starting off at the top, which again, I don't know if you can read this or not, it says the 5 senses activities. So one really great way that I think anybody on days that are hard, that they can pause and acknowledge that hole that they're feeling, or even if they're not feeling it, they know maybe they're being distracting themselves because they're avoiding feeling. One way to cut through that and get right to the heart of it is just to think of the 5 senses. And don't test me on this because I'm not sure I'll be able to name them all off the top of my head. But there's sight, smell, sound, touch, and taste. I think that's all 5. But you just lean into those and you say, okay, what foods did grandma and I have memories over? What music did she like? Throw on her song. What shows? Maybe you guys always watch. We watched Price is Right this morning, and Grandma and I always watch Price is Right. And that was a quick hour that was so therapeutic, just to be like, wow, like this is something we connected over. We didn't have to talk about it. I didn't have to post on Facebook about it, but it was something for me and that memory to connect with. So that's what the 5 senses is. It's just asking yourself, what are little itty bitty things that they were like that I am going to be able to implement into my own life? And if you have things that you can think about your grandparents or anybody that you've lost, what is something that you are like, okay, they liked this show, or maybe your grandma made the best 7-layer bars. I would love to hear what you have to share in the comments. So that's step 1. And again, you don't have to drag anybody into it that you feel like doesn't want to process today. This is so all about you on your timeline, and hopefully in a way that you are comfortable doing it. So then the next step is going to be process those emotions. I always say you got to put a name to what you're feeling in order for it to kind of process through, or else it's just going to be pent up and kind of come out as irritability, anxiousness, maybe a little edgy. When emotions have to be processed, they're like a horse in the background, just bucking all the time. They need to be let out. So if you can, on days that are hard or kind of leaning up to it, I would really encourage you just to set a timer for 30 minutes and just journal or whatever you have to do to just start putting words to how you're actually feeling. There's no right or wrong answer. This is not a competition. There is absolutely no path. Grief is a roller coaster. It goes up and down and backwards and forwards. And when we are putting words to that, we put a little timestamp on it, circle it, and say, hey, this is just how I'm feeling for this time right now. And you're going to feel a lot lighter after that point. And then the last step, which is action plan, going forward. How am I going to use this information for the better? How am I going to incorporate my amazing grandma's memory into my life more? And I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when my sister and I were on the show together talking about our mom's loss. I wish somebody would have sat me down right away after I grieved and said, I know it's tempting to run away. I know it is way easier actually to run away and pretend to be fine and not let anybody in. But you will feel more connected with your mom if you lean into this emotion and you remember her legacy. You will not feel as alone. You will not feel that loss as strongly because you are walking more in step with it. So for 10 years, I felt very isolated from, well, by my own choice, from a lot of people, but especially from my mom's memory because I didn't allow myself to go there. And so this legacy is so much bigger than us. It's so important on an interpersonal level, but also just for our own sanity. It's really important that we do this. So the going forward piece is it's the last one that we're going to talk about tonight, and then I'll let you guys go. But this is really where you're going to seal the deal. This is where this whole concept comes into play. You've done the activities, you've kind of sat down and processed what you're feeling, and now the last step is saying, okay, and now what? How am I going to allow myself to be changed by this? And as we're kind of just topping off the night, rule of 3, right? We're going to talk about the good, you can remember the bad, and you can also think about what lessons they gave you. So again, when you're thinking about going forward, it's broken into 3 categories. What good can I continue? What bad can I discontinue? And what lessons can I learn from their life? I'll kind of just give a couple examples of this. And before I let you go, I just want to remind you, I do have a book out called My Heart Still Remembers. And there is an entire section on legacy that walks us through all of this stuff. So just know, you don't have to have this memorized. Just head to mickyspeer.com. Grab yourself a copy and it will walk you through step by step on how to do this. I hope I'm just shedding some light on this for you today, but I really recommend you grabbing that book. It's what I do on days like today that are hard. And it walks us through those 3. What good can I continue? Think about what virtues they had that you admire. My grandma, again, she was absolutely a homemaker, and that is not natural for me. I am not naturally clean. I am not naturally a cook and a chef. I mean, I like to cook, but not necessarily when I have to cook, right? Chores are not things I enjoy doing. I don't know if anybody does, but grandma did them without ever batting an eye. She never complained. She did what she did because she loved the people she was serving. And man, that's something I want to absolutely continue. Some other examples could be, maybe somebody that you missed and they were really good at patience, or they gave the best hugs, or there's something that they did that was so special to you that maybe you need to remember to bring into your life a little bit more and be able to share that with the people you love and kind of pass it on. So that's the good. The bad would be, nobody's perfect. Everybody has flaws and things that they struggle with. I have other relatives. I won't go into any of grandma's. I think she's wonderful. But, I know people, I've got friends who had parents who were, alcoholics. I have friends who had parents who passed away that perhaps they were smokers, and that doesn't even have to be alcohol or smoking. It could be maybe they lost their temper really fast. Maybe they were super anxious, which is my problem that I have to work on, and I don't want that to continue on. And so we have to pause and say, what things can I let them keep? Maybe they had low self-esteem, and you yourself now hear what they would tell themselves in your head, and you can say, you know what? They struggled with that. I'm gonna let the train stop here, and I'm gonna work on myself to make sure I don't continue that, because they don't want us to continue their struggles, right? We're all human. We all got issues, and so it's also important to look on the other side of the coin, and to be able to say, what can I let them keep? What do I not have to continue? What would they rather me not continue? And that would be what we'd call the bad stuff that we can let stay with them. And then the last thing is the lessons. And of course, it's all kind of lessons if you think about it. But for example, my brother-in-law passed away from suicide. And one lesson that we can learn from his life is the importance of getting help, of the importance of realizing we're not designed to do it on our own. And we can honor Brendan, or my family can honor Brendan, by taking our mental health seriously and learning from his, not even mistakes, but just learning from his life. And I think we all just have to pause and think about people in our life and ask ourselves, okay, what can I learn from them? My other grandpa died of heart issues, and perhaps, we can learn to take better care of our hearts. And that's where that learning thing, and my mom died of cancer. And again, none of these are their fault. We're not blaming them, but I can be more aware of it. In fact, I had a colonoscopy last week, you guys, holy cow. And it was scary. It was super emotional going into that colonoscopy. Thankfully, I don't think they found anything. I'll know in a couple weeks, but the doctor wasn't really concerned. So that's great. But I know because my mom didn't get screened soon enough, not by her own fault. The doctors wouldn't. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get angry tonight. But I'm saying I can learn from my mom's life, and I can stay on top of my colonoscopies, and as can all of you. So that's the 3 things that we can really focus on going forward is, what good can I continue? What are some things I can leave with them that I don't have to continue on? And in fact, they'd rather me didn't. And then lastly, what lessons from their life can I learn and make sure I turn my course another direction? And when we take that with us, we are going to feel so much more connected with our loss. And even though nothing can ever replace the hole that we have in our heart, we're going to walk in tune with it rather than going against it. And I just know in my own life, legacy has been, without a doubt, the key differentiator between my mom's death and perhaps how I didn't handle it so great right out of the bat versus how I handle loss now. And again, I feel so much more, even though it's still really hard, and I miss Grandma's phone calls and her cooking and all things Grandma all the time. And I think about those summers so often. I still feel so much more connected with her because I'm actively thinking of her legacy and bringing that into my conversations that I have with myself. So if you are also grieving, just know I'm right there with you. Angelversaries are really hard, and they always say year 2 is harder than year 1. Great. So I'm not looking forward to that. However, we're in it together, and that's the best part. So thank you all so much for being here. If you haven't yet, head to mickyspeer.com. Get on that weekly email list. I'll make sure I send a copy of tonight's show, perhaps the graphic that you can actually read, as well as that link to my book, My Heart Still Remembers. So thank you so much for being here. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you're going to continue legacy in your own life. And as always, please feel free to share with a friend if you found any of this valuable. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. And from Arizona, have a great rest of your night.